Well, hello and welcome to the Big H podcast. I'm your host, Mike Heise, and tonight's episode is titled Gabbin with Gaupp, and I'm with Dr. Carl Gaupp, science teacher at the high school. Carl, it's great to have you along. How you doing?
Great. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Mike. I'm really honored to be here tonight.
Okay, well, we're honored to have you. As we usually like to start our podcast, it's finding out a little bit about our guests, actually, a lot about our
Right.
and we'll start off with some biographical information about your your birth and your parents and any siblings you have. So take it away.
All right. So I was born in Rochester at the old St. Mary's Hospital. My parents were William and Shirley. I have a younger brother, John, who is 13 months younger than me. And we grew up in Hilton. Didn't attend public schools. We went to St. Paul right from preschool. And then we eventually did make the transition to Hilton High School.
When you were growing up, tell me a little bit about growing up with your brother and what road you living on, roads and houses and stuff like that.
All right, so we grew up on Huffer Road. My parents purchased a house as soon as they got married. Both of them were a little bit older. So it was me, my brother John, and probably he was my best friend growing up because it was pretty rural. So this was on Huffer. So the north side of the road was houses, and the south side was all farmland, and that was farmed by Danny Greenwell at the time. So, there were a couple other kids in the neighborhood, but we hung out. We did everything together, from building forts out in the backwoods to making snow forts in the winter. Yeah, so like I said, there were a couple other people. The Spears were down the street from us, and there was another couple kids close by, but it was pretty close knit, I would say.
And your mom and dad, what were their occupations?
So both of them worked at Kodak. So at that time, Kodak was the largest employer in the area. I believe my mom was an administrative assistant. I don't remember exactly what department she was in because she stopped working when she had me. So she resigned from Kodak at that point. I don't remember how many years she had. She probably had 15 or so years. And my dad worked in the synthetic chemicals division, and he was part of the shipping department. So that he would fill orders, and I think eventually he became. I think his title was a superintendent. So he had some people underneath him, some reports, and I remember him filling out rating sheets in the basement. He hated doing it. He hated judging other people, but that's
Right.
what they did.
And you mentioned that I think kindergarten through eighth grade you attended St. Paul Lutheran Church.
Correct.
Talk a little bit about that education that you received at that location.
Yeah. So Christian based, obviously, Lutheran, Missouri Synod, and small classrooms. So 2 grades per classroom, maybe 30 kids total in the classroom. That's probably I'm probably way over that number.
Mm-hmm.
Go to chapel once a week. And then I started to kind of wonder why some of my friends were going to church on Sundays and I wasn't. So I asked my mom about it, and we started going to church. They weren't really. My mom wasn't really part of any denomination, and she got really into it. And Dad never did. He was part of the church in the city, the Salem United Methodist, but he didn't really. He would go to things like Christmas Eve and Easter. He'd attend that, but mostly it was just my mom and my brother and I, all through grade school. But really high quality education, I would say. Lots of accountability, which I like. It's really my thing. So really positive experiences at St. Paul.
Now I attended public schools and then I went to Sunday school and was confirmed also through St. Paul Lutheran Church. Um, and I always felt like, Sunday, oh, mom's making me go to church and
Yeah.
and but there were some lessons that I learned, some discipline, paying attention to the sermon,
Yep.
following along in the hymnal. Speak to that a little bit, if that had any effect on you, and maybe it didn't.
Yeah, I would say it did. I always felt like Pastor Zoller would make eye contact with everyone in the congregation, so you didn't want to be falling asleep. But he he kept it pretty engaging, and he would have the kids come up when we were little, and he'd do his little children's sermon. Um, and at that point, I think I just wanted to get old enough where I could do communion.
Hmm.
So then I got confirmed, and I was pretty excited about that. But otherwise, lessons from just to be a good person, really, just
Hmm.
be good to other people, treat people like you want to be treated. And I always felt like I got that at St. Paul, and I've tried to live that way as best I can. I'm obviously not perfect, but do the best I
Yeah,
can.
there's only one person that was perfect, and
Yeah,
we're not going to
yeah,
talk about dogma or religion too seriously. But one thing that I always thought that I got out of being involved in church services is that you learned a lot of tremendous discipline. You had to sit there, you had to be quiet, and I think that also helps when kids go on to school.
definitely. I agree with that. Yeah, yeah. Even in Sunday school, I think maybe a little bit less. We could kind of goof
Hmm.
around a little bit there,
Hmm.
but in church, you're on your best behavior.
Um, at that education at St. Paul's, did you remember any teachers like vividly with any of their lessons or charisma or anything that they taught you?
I really remember Mrs. Hendershot for English. She was really big on making sure that we knew how to write and we knew grammar. And that served me really well going into high school and then obviously into graduate school also. So she was a big part of that, being able to read and dive into text and understand it. Uh, Miss Schaefer was my fourth grade teacher, and I liked her a lot. She was a brand new teacher, so she brought a lot of energy to the classroom. And then Mr. Taylor was our PE/seventh, eighth grade teacher. So he did all the intramural sports. He coached basketball, coached the soccer. So he was pretty influential on me as well.
So you did play on the basketball team, St. Paul Sabres, I think, right?
Yeah, I was a Saber. Yep,
Uh-huh.
gangly. God, yeah, I've seen some of the pictures, and yeah,
So then you make the transition over to Hilton High School. What was that transition like for you coming from St. Paul's to the high school?
that was a shock, big culture shock. So you're going from a school where you've got, maybe 10 people that you're hanging out with on a daily basis, and you're thrown into, a big meat grinder of 200 kids in your class. So at that time, Hilton was still doing homerooms, and so we were in a classroom with kids in the same general last name, so F's and G's and H's, and I didn't know anybody in there. Um, but no one really gave me any trouble. I just kind of wanted to not stand out. But pretty quickly, I was able to make some friends and make the building seem a little bit smaller.
I mean, would you describe yourself as even now, or was it just back then that I don't want to stand out? I just kind of want to, do my thing and.
Yeah, I try to. The saying that sometimes I'll tell my students now too is I don't want to be the tallest nail
Hmm.
because the tallest nail always gets hammered first. So I
Hmm.
tried to lead by example, not be a very loud person. Um, yeah, I would say I'm the same way now. I'm definitely not the first teacher that the kids are going to come and hang out with all the time, but uh, it served me really well.
And as you're in school education now, you ended up becoming obviously science is your forte. Talk
Yep.
about some of those early influential teachers that you had.
Right. So Ed Evans was a big influence when he's throwing bubble gum at people when we answered questions correctly. Uh, and then Mr. Holoka for my keyboarding class and Mr. Dowd for chemistry. So I was fortunate enough to have him for 2 years in chemistry regents and then AP Chem. And that really got me going towards the science part. I liked the other disciplines. I really liked history. I still like history. English, I was okay at. But the science people, they're the ones that really scratch that itch for me, I guess. And I was decent at it. I was proficient enough to be successful.
And then also outside of the classwork, any sports or hobbies or activities you got involved in?
Right. So I played baseball and basketball my freshman year in high school, and you know, playing on St. Paul's team, everyone plays. It's kind of like a modified team now, I guess. And I got to high school, and some of these kids have been playing together for a really long time, and I didn't get any playing time. And that was with Mr. Bates. I think he was a pretty new teacher at the time, also. And no fault of his. I didn't pick up the offense. I didn't have I wasn't talented enough at that time or big enough to hang with those guys, and I ended up being what I called a fifth quarter all star. So they would put everyone who didn't play in for like 5-10 minutes after the game was over to kind of run around there and feel like they're being a part of the team. But I practiced hard with those kids, and so it became something where, and I'm still kind of like that today, that if I'm putting in the effort, I'd like to participate fully. And if I wasn't participating, then I had a hard time understanding why I was putting in all that effort in practice. So I didn't follow through with basketball after that. I stopped playing basketball and stuck with baseball because I had success at it. I was decent at it from an early age. Mom signed us up for Hilton Parma Rec. Never did T-ball, but right into Hilton Parma Rec, and then maybe some limited travel, but there wasn't a lot of that back in the mid to late 80s.
Mm-hmm.
So then played freshman baseball and then JV and then up to varsity.
Uh, Now, you mentioned some things about, you know, playing in the fifth quarter. What would you say to those young athletes nowadays that maybe they haven't reached their athleticism or in the beginning they're still learning the skill, but you want to give them that encouragement to be like, hey, you may not have it yet, but years down the road, this might be you.
Yeah, I definitely have some regret that I didn't stick with basketball because I did get bigger. So if you're, I would say if you're really passionate about the sport, if you really like it, then put in the work, and maybe you'll get recognized for that. If you don't put in the work, you'll never know. So like
Hmm.
I'll never know if I could have played varsity basketball or even been a part of the team. It might have been kind of cool. So don't give up. It's obviously, you and I both know it's a lot different today than it was
Hmm.
when we
Sure
were
is.
playing. Um, yeah, effort. I think effort trumps everything. Even in baseball, I wasn't the fastest. I wasn't the strongest. I wasn't the best at baseball, but I like to think I worked the hardest. So that hard work really paid off for me, and it's something that my folks taught me when I was growing up, and I learned at St. Paul too.
So, talk a little bit about your development into baseball.
Right. So, kind of an outsider, I would say. Coming into the baseball program, people were established at positions, and I had to earn my keep. I had to really fight to get onto these teams, and I was able to do that. I was able to displace some people who were, I guess I would say, incumbents at positions. And for me, it was first base. It's really the only position I played a lot of. I mean, when you're little, you play every position.
Hmm.
But as you get older, you start to specialize in being left-handed, throwing and batting. That starts to pigeonhole you in high school. So they're not going to put you at shortstop. You're going to pitch, you're going to play first base, or you're going to play outfield. And I chose first base mostly because my idol, Don Mattingly at the time. So I watched a lot of him. So did freshman baseball. That went well. Had a good time. The coach was Mr. Meyer. I believe he's in the Alumni Hall of Fame now. I think he has his
Hmm.
doctorate also. I don't know in what. It might be English.
Hmm.
And then sophomore year, I had Mike Burke, and I played first base there too. I think I displaced someone who was incumbent in that position. And then my junior and senior year, I made the varsity team. And at that point, then I didn't have to compete anymore for someone at a position. I was kind of competing against myself and then our opponents to always try and get better.
Hmm. And describe a little bit about your varsity teams that junior and senior year, your teammates, your coaches, and your successes and your challenges.
So junior year, personally, was a good year. I want to say that I either led or was very close to leading the team in batting. But the team itself was kind of mediocre. It was it was a talented team. We had guys like Jason Zaney, Pete Mance, Jeff Andreski, Scott Ikus, Dan DeRue. Brian Hainan would have been on that team as a junior with me. And I just don't think we didn't meet the expectations. We came up short our junior year. We lost in the first round to Athena. We were probably maybe 500, a little bit. We were around 500. It was really unremarkable. I enjoyed it immensely. I remember Coach Me used to crush us with conditioning, absolutely crush us. Doing bear crawls and push-ups and sit-ups, diamond push-ups. So I got stronger, I got better. And then coming into senior year after losing in the first round of sectionals, I had goals. I didn't want to lose in the first round again. That sucked. That was a really bad feeling. And we added some younger guys like John Starwald and Tom Huxmeyer. Rich Schmilek was on that team. Kevin Newton, Dave Fleming, Chris DiPasquale, who came out of nowhere and hit over 500. And we were really successful that year. We ended up making it to the sectional finals. Unfortunately, we ran into a buzzsaw as far as Webster. They had two great pitchers, Steinworth and Baker, and they just threw gas, and we didn't really have much of a chance. But it was a great experience. And I always forget, Steve Carter was on that team too. So it was Steve, Pete Mance, and myself were tri-captains on that team, which is unusual because usually, maybe two max. And I always wondered in the back of my head if Coach Me had his hand in that a little bit and named me captain because, like I said, I worked really hard. I didn't complain. I can remember Coach Me, he would always say, "Is anyone tired?" And if you said you were tired, well, you just keep running. But if you were good to go, then maybe he'd stop. So, yeah, senior year was a really good experience. Those guys were great to play with, and whenever you're winning, it's fun.
And then you obviously said that you were a captain along with Steve Carter and Pete Mance, was it?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Pete
Talk
threw
a little
gas.
bit. You sure did, and he was a lefty like yourself.
Right.
Talk a little bit about being instituted as a captain in your high school baseball team and how it helped develop leadership skill.
Yes. When you're a captain, the eyes are on you. You got more eyes on you. So you got to be doing things the right way. And I was always trying to please Coach Me also. So when he said jump, I was like, how high? There's I think it's Pete Rose has a quote about baseball. He says, I'd go through hell in a gasoline suit to play baseball. And that's kind of how I felt and still do about Coach Me. If he told me to do something, I would go do it. And I'd like to think that other people watched that and said, well, you know what? Gaupp isn't the fastest. He isn't the strongest, but he's putting in the work and he's getting it done on the field.
Any postseason awards for you, all county or anything like that?
Yeah, I was named second team all county my junior and senior year. You always want more, so I was a little disappointed, but I didn't have as good a senior year as some other guys on the team. So Pete was an outstanding pitcher. So he got first team all county. And like I said, Chris DiPasquale hit over 500, absolutely torched the league. So he was first team all county also. And then I think Tom Huxmeyer may have also gotten first team or second team that year. And then Coach Me always had, I forgot about this, is we would have a banquet and he had his own awards that he would give out. And one of them was a Mr. Hustle Award. And I won that one. I think my junior year I got most improved, but senior year I got Mr. Hustle, and that meant a lot to me because I was always moving. Never walked to a station ever. That was an instant way to have to run a suicide. which
Mhm.
nobody wanted to do.
Yeah, I remember that was my first introduction to Coach Me took over, I think, in '86. And he was a big proponent of the stations and how you develop skill. And
Yep.
boom, you could get more done. And talk about some of those practices where he could get enough done in an hour where some coaches would take 3 to do it.
Yeah, and he had no assistants either. It
Mhm,
was just him, and you've got 12, 13 guys, and he trusted you to get after it when you're at that. When you're doing side toss with a broom handle and tape balls,
mhm,
one-handed, kind of in a semi-kneeling position with one leg kind of further out in front of the other. So it was, you never knew if he was going to be walking by, and you wanted to make sure that you were, putting the barrel on the ball. So it was, even though he had to focus on certain things, his eye was everywhere. So we worked on bunting. I was talking with Wheels this week about how to get hit by a pitch,
mhm,
and Wheels said, "Well, we can't do that anymore, Carl. You can't throw at kids." But we would get those Incrediballs, and he would have us stand there with a bat, and someone else would throw an Incrediball at you, and you would practice how to get hit,
mhm.
so that you didn't hit your elbow, you didn't get hit in the head, you put your bat down. So some of that stuff really stuck with me.
And thinking back to baseball, did you have any momentous individual times or team times?
Oh, uh, Coach Me never really gave the green light when people had a 3-0 count.
Mhm,
He gave it to me once, and we were playing out at Bishop Kearney, and I think the bases were loaded, and I hit a triple on that 3-0 pitch. The guy just grooved it, and I hit it in the left center field gap and just ran and ran and ran. So that was a lot of fun to be able to do that. And then
most
playing
cha
in Silver Stadium, that was always fun too.
any challenging moments that you recall that maybe built character even though they were disappointing at the start?
Partway through our senior year, we got our butts handed to us by Brighton, and I remember getting the guys around, and I must have said something. Coach Me overheard it, and he really liked what I had to say. A bunch of the guys on the team did not. They really didn't want to hear from me, but it turned us around. So that was something that I take some pride in, that I was able to redirect us and get us going in a better direction.
So school wise, what was the culture like at Hilton Sky High School during that time? I think you graduated in '93.
Correct. I graduated in
Okay.
'93.
Yeah.
It was good. I mean, I had a close set of friends. One or two of them I still keep in touch with. Uh, some of the trappings that kids still have to endure in high school were there. So there were bullies. You had Freshman Friday. I got picked on like a lot of people do, because I mean I was kind of the easier target too, being the new guy. But it wasn't bad. Like, no one hurt me. Uh, Teachers were supportive. It was it was good. I have fond memories of the high school. I remember the carpet on the third floor just being awful looking and dingy. But because we'd walk upstairs with the snow on our boots and shoes and whatnot, and but yeah, same sort of stuff. I wore shorts to school in December, and my health
Mhm.
teacher, Mr. Stevens, is like, "Gaupp, do you know what the temperature is outside?" And I'm like, "Yeah, whatever." So it hasn't changed a lot of that stuff.
Do you have any jobs in high school outside of school?
Yeah. So the one job that I had besides mowing grandma's lawn in the summertime was I worked at Jan's restaurant. I was a dishwasher, and I did that every fall and summer during my junior and senior year. And in the springtime, I would tell my bosses that I couldn't work because I was playing baseball, and they were pretty good with it. They hired me back after the baseball season. But that was I had a paper route also.
Oh.
So I had a paper route on Huffer Road, and it was cold. God, it was
Mhm.
cold in the winter. And my dad took mercy on us, and he would drive me. So it was for the Times Union, so it was the
Mhm.
afternoon paper.
Mhm.
So he'd drive us, and then we would deliver that way. But I remember I hated having to collect money from people.
Mhm.
it was always like pulling teeth. Some people were great, you're dealing with dogs and all this other stuff. So, but it was another one of those responsibility building pieces that people wanted their paper. You had to get out there. It didn't matter if it was raining or snowing. It had to get done.
Mhm. And then I would think, did you have your own bank account and learn how to use money and save money?
Yeah, my parents were. It was interesting. One summer they gave my brother and I $50. I think we got a $50 bill, which doesn't sound like a lot now, but when you're 10 years old, that was a ton of money. So
Hmm.
that's what you get for the summer. So you manage it. And I remember not doing a very good job with it. My brother was always way better with money, but I did learn. And then we got a bank account, and my paycheck would go into that, and we'd save and save, and yeah, that was part of the culture in our house was saving. My dad was a depression baby, so nothing got thrown away. You go to throw something. Oh, I can use that. We can do something with that. Okay, Dad. Okay, and I try not to do as much of that now. Like I'll go on purges periodically, um, but yeah, still save is a big thing.
So your junior, senior year in high school, when did you know what you wanted to do and then pursue your college?
I knew I wanted to go to college. I knew I was pretty good at school. I kind of had that game down. I could navigate school pretty well. But at that point, I still had this pipe dream that I was going to be able to play Major League Baseball. You're a senior in high school, and you're like, "Hey, I'm pretty successful. Let's see if I can go to the next level." So my college search really focused on baseball, and I only applied to 2 schools, which is really lazy, and I don't recommend kids do that now.
Hmm.
Um, so I applied to Fredonia and Cortland. Nothing else. I didn't want to be in Rochester. I knew I wanted to get out of town, but I didn't want to be super far away. And Jason Zaney was playing baseball at Fredonia at the time, so I went on a visit with him. And funny story, the drive out there, he had this big old Oldsmobile, I think, or Chevy, huge boat, and we're on the thruway, and I got sleepy and I dozed off, and then he dozed off, and we almost went off the thruway. We kind of jerked back, and we were awake again and good to go. But so I went on that visit to Fredonia, and I liked it. They seemed interested in me. So that's where I focused my application and got in there. And as far as a college major goes, it certainly wasn't chemistry to start with. It was some environmental studies major because I wanted to be outside. And so that's where I started at Fredonia, doing all my liberal arts stuff, get all that out of the way. And I took some chemistry classes, and I did pretty well in them.
And so did you play all 4 years on the baseball team at Fredonia?
Yes, I did. Yep. Walked down in the fall. We had a fall league. Um, Thinking I was going to be a first baseman. I had played a little bit of outfield in high school, but once the fall season ended and things had kind of panned out, coach said, "You're not going to be a first baseman for us. You're too fast. You're going to be out in the outfield." And as long as that got me an opportunity to play, I was fine with that. So my freshman year in the spring, I played right field, and I started. And then sophomore year through my senior year, I played center field 99% of the time. Once in a while, I'd go over to right field or I'd go over to left field, depending on how we were mixing and matching. But I was always in the infield. I never saw first base again.
Hmm. And how were your teams? How did you hit? How did you play? Like, were you successful there too?
The last time I looked at the career stats was probably more than a decade ago. I think my college average was 300, which
Pretty good.
I'm pretty happy with that. It's not
Hmm.
easy to hit 300 in college.
Hmm.
Some years were better than others. My sophomore year was absolutely brutal, uh, terrible. I remember talking to my dad, and he ended up writing me a letter of encouragement, which he never really did for baseball. He's like, "Why don't you go talk to the coach? You'll be fine. You'll work through it." And I still have that letter. And then junior year, I had a great year. I think I hit 388 my junior year. I tied the team in home runs as a leadoff hitter.
Mm-hmm.
And we went to the ECAC tournament. I think we played either U of R or RIT. We came out here to Rochester, and the game got rained out, and we didn't get to finish it. And they said, well, you can come back tomorrow and finish the game. And the coaches at the time were like, nope, we're not coming back 2 hours for another game. So we ended up forfeiting that. And that was my only postseason experience in college. And then our senior year, we were above 500, but not by much. We were average because there was very little discipline on the team. It was completely different from Hilton baseball. But my senior year was nice. The end of my senior year, the home game, my very last at bat, I hit a game-winning home run right
Wow.
over the center field fence,
Mm-hmm.
which was really cool. I'll never forget that. Being able to
Still
end
have
my college career.
You have the game ball, the home run ball.
Yes, I do. I have the game ball. I'm looking over at I've got a case of my home run balls. It's a small case. There aren't a lot of home runs. I always thought if I hit a home run, it was a mistake. The pitcher made a mistake. I wasn't a home run hitter. But
Well, aren't you kind of tall for a leadoff hitter, though?
yeah, so I'm 6'1".
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I think I had good plate discipline,
Mm-hmm.
and I was relatively fast, or I was just. I think and I talked to some of my. I played in the men's league for years in Rochester, and I talk about baseball IQ. Some people have really high baseball IQs, and others don't. And
Mm-hmm.
I think I had a pretty high baseball IQ, so I was able to steal bases once in a while. I didn't make a lot of mistakes on the base paths. I got on base pretty often. I got hit by pitches all the time, it seemed.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's why I ended up being up in the leadoff spot.
Talk a little bit about your college roommates throughout the years and campus life in general.
Oh wow, I'm really fortunate. My freshman year, I roomed with Steve Carter, so we both came from Hilton, and we roomed together, and that was a nice transition. I think for both of us, and we didn't really hang out that much. He didn't play baseball in college. We started to grow apart, I guess you could say. He got a group of friends. I had a group of friends, and that was it for us for being roommates our freshman year. And after that, like I say, I was extremely fortunate that my parents allowed me to have a single for my sophomore year and my junior year. And then my senior year, I moved off campus the last semester, and I roomed with a bunch of guys that played baseball. And fortunately, they were the ones that either had all the partying out of their system or a vast majority of it. So our house never really became a party house. We didn't have any big get-togethers there.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that was a roommate situation.
And when you were in college, at what point did you end up picking a major and you said, "This is it. Chemistry is going to be it.
Yeah, that was
It's
my
going to be my
sophomore
life."
year. Sophomore year, after my first semester, I took organic chemistry, and I liked it. I said, I'm going to try this. I'll try chemistry. And I went and picked up the major, and they said, okay, these are the courses you have to take. And I was shocked. So they said, well, you have to take physics. Okay, I'll take physics. I said, I'll sign up for, at the time they called it college physics. And they said, nah, try again. You have to take university physics, which was calc-based. And I hadn't had any calculus in high school. I took, what did they call it? Math 12, I think, when we were in school.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the pre-calc, right?
Yes.
And so my first year I took at Fredonia, I took survey of calculus, and I thought, I'm done with math. I really struggled with it. It was a lot of work for me. And they said, well, you've got to take calculus also. So I had to take 3 semesters of calc. I had to take university physics, which was a calc-based physics. And I didn't take physics in high school. I was a typical, well, maybe not even a typical. I was, I wanted to get out of school as quick as I could. So I dropped physics my senior year with Mr. Herzog.
Mm-hmm.
And he had that class 7th and 8th sets, which was perfect for me. because then I got early dismissal.
Hmm.
And that was at the time in high school when you could opt out of PE when you
Right.
were in season.
Right.
So I was done at noon every day the second half of my senior year. So my buddy John Franz and I, we would go to McDonald's. That's when McDonald's just opened up in town.
Hmm.
Almost every day we'd go and get lunch.
Hmm.
Just crazy. So in Fredonia, then I got that chemistry major, and I just kind of leaned into it. I battled through calculus. My grades were okay in there. They steadily started to decline as the calculus got more and more difficult. I ended up getting A's in my physics class, and I really liked organic chemistry. That was my thing. It didn't have a lot of math in it, and so I just kept going at that point with chem.
And then also probably the most important event in your life. You met a very important person at
Yeah,
Fredonia. Tell us a little bit about that.
yeah. So my freshman year, I met Janet. So that would have been fall semester. I went over to the girls' dorm for a fundraiser and was looking for another girl at the time, and she wasn't there, but Janet was. She was her roommate, and we got to talking. And I asked her if I had a chance with her roommate, and she was like, "Nope." and so that was a little disappointing, but that's fine. I still had fun. Janet was dating someone at the time, and I saw her on campus a couple days later, and she said hi to me, and she must have broken up with that guy, and then I dated another girl for a little bit, and that didn't work out. And so I asked her to come to a baseball game later in the fall, and she came out and she watched the game. I actually ended up hitting a home run in the game. She was walking up to the field when it was rolling out towards the track. There was no fence on Ludwig Field at the time. And she went to almost every baseball game from then on out. And so we've been together since October of 1993.
We'll get into your family life in a couple minutes from now.
Okay.
Um, and anything else, any college clubs or anything like that, or is pretty much baseball and science kept you pretty busy?
Yeah, there wasn't a lot of time for anything else really as far as
Mhm.
that goes. I did independent research my senior year, so that would require me to go into the chemistry building on weekends, and I didn't really like it. But that was about it. Yeah, I'd go home on holidays. Columbus weekend, we'd go home. Um, yeah, baseball and chemistry. That was it. And that was, let me tell you, it was packed because
Mhm.
in the fall I would overstack my schedule. I'd take up to 18 credit hours, and then in the spring I would only take 12 or 13. I'd make sure I was a full-time student, but that way I wasn't killing myself trying to do chem and play baseball, which was a lot.
And I hope some of your students watch this podcast. Any advice you would have to those seniors that are entering college? Like, these are some do's you want to do in college. These might be some don'ts.
You're going to learn a lot about yourself and the people that you associate with pretty early on in college. You're going to see people that first semester, and then you're not going to see them after that first semester. And you're going to say, "Hey, where did Billy Bob go?" "Oh, well, Billy Bob liked to party on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday nights, and he got a 0.1 GPA, so he's gone."
Hmm.
Uh, Try to make as many friends as you can. I don't know. I really like the small universities, the small schools. I feel like you can make more connections with people. When you go to these big schools, you're a number. You're one of
Hmm.
35 or 40,000 kids, and it's really
Hmm.
hard to find your place. It's hard to
Hmm.
make it small. But a
Hmm.
place like Fredonia, you can do your work. Do your work. Go to class. Don't skip class. I mean, you can skip class once in a while, I guess, but ultimately you're paying for it, and these kids are
Hmm.
paying through the teeth for it right now. Uh, yeah, do your work and take pride in it.
All right. And good words, by the way. Good words, good words, good words. I had friends that never saw them after freshman year because they didn't get to their
Yep.
studies. So what year did you graduate from Fredonia, and where did that take you?
Graduated in May of 1997. Janet and I both did. And at the time, Fredonia's chemistry department was big on sending their students to graduate school. So I applied to a whole bunch of graduate schools. Again, my focus was weird. I wanted to be in a place that was like outdoorsy, and so I applied to places like Vermont, University of Oregon, University of Colorado Boulder, and then I picked what what the kids call today still safety schools. So I applied to UB, and I applied to Bowling Green State University. I had done an internship with them between my junior and senior year, so I had some connections. And then I applied to Florida, and I wasn't even going to apply to Florida because they sent me the application, and it wasn't a nice, crisp PDF that was well formatted. It was one of those things that you'd see when we were in high school, a photocopy that had been photocopied,
Mm-hmm.
that was off
Mm-hmm.
center, and just a mess. I'm like, this is looks like garbage. And Janice said,
Mm-hmm.
you should fill it out. Filled it out, and that's the one I got into. I didn't get into Boulder. I didn't get into Vermont. I didn't get into Oregon. I got into UB and Bowling Green, but Florida was the best one I got into. So we went down and visited, and met the professors down there, the one that I wanted to work for, and the graduate students took us out to dinner, and one of them took me to a baseball game. So we went to McKeithen Stadium where the Gators played. I think it's renamed, or they may even have a new stadium now. And we watched a baseball game, and it was great. It was great. I liked it. I thought, oh, Florida, it's going to be cool. So that's where I ended up, was going to Florida and studying under John Reynolds, was my research advisor.
And then how many years was graduate school, and what was your wife during those times?
So 5 years. The average is between 3 and 5, so I was on the longer side of it. The people that go 3 years tend to burn lots of bridges because they're in a race to get out, and I just kind of plodded along. I really struggled with it for a while. The nice thing about graduate school as a chemistry major is they pay you. So I had no tuition. I had to pay some student fees, maybe a couple $100, and then they gave me a $20,000 stipend, and I was a graduate TA the first couple of years. So I taught general chemistry labs mostly in the evening, so you'd get kind of the crappy ones late at night. And $20,000 even back then wasn't a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So Janet she got a job. She was looking. She had all kinds of jobs that she was putting herself out there for, and she didn't know anybody, right? So I mean, I had my graduate school people that I became friends with, but she didn't have anyone. It was just her and I. Her family's all up here in New York, so that was really difficult on her. And I didn't make it particularly easier because I was off, going to events and social things with my graduate student friends, and I didn't always include her, and I think that was tough for her, especially early on. But then she latched on to a company called Spain Construction, and they built some higher end homes in the area, and she became their office manager, and she learned a lot about home building, how to deal with people. And her boss was just phenomenal, Tom Spain. He was really good to her. So she ended up doing really well there.
All right. Were you married when you were down in Florida? Come back here for marriage?
Yeah. So right when I found out I was going to go to Florida, my mom kind of pulled me aside and said, "So do you have a plan? So you're gonna marry this girl, right? If you're gonna be moving down there with her, you're gonna get married." I was like, "Oh, yeah." I hadn't really thought about it. So then, yeah, we got engaged. It made sense. I mean, it wasn't a question. Like I wasn't biting my nails wondering if she was going to say yes or no. Not because I'm awesome, but because we just We had been
Cool.
together for 4 years, and it was kind of the next logical step for us. So we got married in 1998, which was the beginning of my second year at Florida. So we were engaged for the first and then got married in October of 98. And we flew back up here for the wedding. So Janet was planning a lot of this remotely with her mom helping tremendously. And we were fortunate enough to have Pastor Zoller marry us. So we were this is before the new sanctuary was built. So we were in their chapel.
Right.
So he married us. We flew up on a Thursday. We had a rehearsal dinner, and Janet was just telling me tonight at Crescent Beach.
Mm-hmm.
And then we got married on Saturday at St. Paul. The weather was fantastic, and October is always a crapshoot in Western New York. And then Sunday we went to Letchworth State Park and saw the colors, and we got on a plane and flew back to Florida on Monday because I had to teach. So there was no honeymoon for that.
Who was it? Who was your best man? Was it your brother or who?
Nope, best man was John Franz, or Franz. I always called him Franz, but I graduated with him, and we're still good friends. He's the godparent to both of our kids. He's in the U.S. Army still, so he was at the time in '98. He was at West Point, so he drove up from West Point and was my best man. My brother John was in the wedding also, and then another guy, Shane Price, was also in the wedding.
And your wife, where's she from? She's local, right?
She's a Ranger Bear. She's a Spencerport kid. Yeah, so I always kind of mocked her mercilessly about her Smokey the Bear emblem on her on her hoodies. But yeah, she's from Spencerport, so that worked out really. I mean, fantastic to be able to be at Fredonia and find someone basically from your hometown. So family events were easy.
And baseball is obviously a big part of your life. Was she a baseball fan?
I wouldn't say she was at first. I think she wanted to be supportive and watch me. And she still did up until I stopped playing in the men's league here in Rochester. She'd come to as many games as she could, and she would get nervous for me when big situations would come up. So she's always been there, and she's been really good about letting me bounce ideas off of her and frustrations with different teams I've been a part of.
So you end up getting your PhD.
Yep.
What job did you end up going into after that?
I was hired directly to the Dow Chemical Company in Midland, Michigan. So if I put up my Michigan sign here, if this is Detroit down here, Midland is kind of like right in the middle.
Okay.
So I got hired there right after grad school. I didn't do any more graduate work. I was so done with graduate school. I almost quit graduate school my second year. I went to my professors and I said, "I'm done. I can't do this anymore. I don't want to do it." And two of them said, "Don't quit. Don't quit. Finish it out. Once you get that PhD, no one can take it away from you. But if you leave graduate school now, you'll never come back." So I stuck it out and got it done. So worked at Dow. I was a research chemist. I guess my title was a senior research chemist, which didn't really mean anything. And I worked on lots of different projects and got to travel a little bit, spent some time in Minneapolis, Houston, Texas. They sent me to one conference. I had to beg to go to that. That was in San Diego. So yeah, I lasted there about 4 years.
And your experience at Dow, did that tailor you into making a decision to go into teaching?
Yes. So when I almost quit graduate school, that's what I was going to go into, was teaching. But at Dow, I found out that I just wasn't cut out for the research part. I didn't have that itch to be in the lab all the time, doing a lot of reading and trying things out. And I had some bad experiences with supervisors. One guy just told me, he says, "Carl, you're just a pair of hands. Get in the lab and make stuff." And that went against what they had told me early on in my career at Dow, was if you have a question, you should ask it, because you're a PhD. You should know what you're talking about. So that kind of soured me from research. And then when I finally did quit, and I said I want to go into teaching, some of the older guys there kind of scoffed at me for wanting to go into education. They couldn't understand why someone would leave the Dow Chemical Company, but I couldn't wait to get the hell out of there.
Mm-hmm. So what year was that you left Dow Chemical, and then I think did you come back here to New
Yep, we
York
came
after
back
that?
here.
Okay.
So there were some other stressors. Obviously, we're in Michigan, so we're away from family, and my folks are older. And they were both sick at the time, so we came back to Fredonia. Actually came back to Rochester first, and then I enrolled in Fredonia again. And I did that just out of familiarity. I knew the school. I didn't want to do a Brockport. I probably could have, but I wouldn't have gotten the same treatment.
And then Fredonia, how was that education go? And through all of this, when were your children born?
William, he's our eldest. He was born in 2005.
Okay.
So he was born in Michigan. So we left Michigan in 2007. And then, so the three of us moved back in 2007, and we got an apartment in Fredonia while I was going back to school. And then our daughter Emma was born in 2014.
Okay.
Not by, it wasn't for lack of trying. Let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm. And earlier on, we've talked, and Will is a child with autism.
Yep.
Explain to us a little bit about what it was like recognizing that he had this condition, and then being able to find the right educational opportunities for him so that he could flourish.
Yeah, it was difficult for us. Probably more for me. Both of us. I don't want to. It was tough. Fortunately, Will wasn't in school yet when we were in Michigan. So we got back to Fredonia, and Janet had him evaluated at Fredonia at the time. And that's when they started. I think the initial diagnosis was like a late talker,
Mm-hmm.
but we knew that something wasn't right. He was very stiff. He had that the sensory sort of thing, so he would take mulch and at the playground and sprinkle it over his head. So we knew that, and then when we tried to leave the park, he would just flip out. He had to stay there. He wanted to stay there. So that was about all we got for him at Fredonia. I finished up my teaching degree as quickly as I possibly could because we didn't have an income, a big income. And so then we got back to Rochester, and that's when Will was about school age time, and we started to explore different services for him.
And if you were talking to a parent with a child at a very young age who was going through evaluations, what's some advice that you would give that parent or those parents?
Oh.
And I don't mean to put you on the spot, but
yeah,
it's
it's wow, it's difficult. It's tough. You have, as a parent, you have when you see your child born, you think you're kind of looking to the future already. What is my kid going to be doing? Are they going to be going to college? Are they going to be playing athletics? Are they going to be really good in the classroom? And early on, the hardest thing for me, and still is letting go of some of that, understanding that he is who he is, and he's awesome for who he is.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to change my perception of what my selfish goals were for him, and that he's going to be just fine the way he is. It's like the workshop that we had this past week. I don't know if you sat in on Tina's
Mm-hmm.
trunk or not, but really, really powerful that we should look at the positive. So as a parent that might have a child that's living with a disability, is try to find the positives. As hard as it is, it's really, really difficult. But they're a person just like you and I, so it's important that we try and find the positive.
And he's a senior now at Hilton High School, is that correct?
He is a senior, extremely happy senior. He likes the pretty girls a lot.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So he does, in the summertime, he does West Side Challenger baseball.
Mm-hmm.
And in the wintertime, and it's still going on now, he does Ice Cats special hockey. So he goes on tournaments and things like that. And he's been on that for over a decade now.
Okay.
And then in the spring, he does unified basketball, which is a hit. And everyone in the high school got to see him last year when they played an exhibition game during advisement time. And he lit the place up. Everyone was just going bananas. So he is an extremely well-liked individual at the high school. Everyone knows him.
Well, that's awesome to hear. Just like you said, like your kids are really awesome in their own way, in their own unique way. Um, and I guess I don't mean to switch topics, but going back to you're in Fredonia, student teaching. When did you get your first job? Talk a little bit about that job search that you had.
I honestly thought getting a teaching job out of Fredonia was going to be like falling off a log.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really arrogant on my part. I thought that these schools were going to fall over themselves to hire me to get a PhD that wants to teach chemistry. And I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't have been more wrong about that. It didn't work out that way at all. My first interview was out in Victor, and I thought I did really well. I had to teach a lesson. It was on electrochemistry. It was a pretty boring lesson. I think that's what sunk me. I just kind of lectured. I should have done something. I didn't know. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you don't know what you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And then I interviewed for a job at Rush Henrietta. And interestingly, one of the people on the committee was the varsity baseball coach of Webster that we played against my senior year in high school.
Okay.
And I tried to bring up some of that game, and he wanted nothing to do with it. Didn't want to talk about it, didn't crack a smile or make small talk. And that just kind of, I don't know if it told me something about him, or maybe he just didn't have anything for me, but I obviously didn't get that job. I didn't even get a call back for that one.
Mm-hmm.
And then I interviewed it. While I was still at Fredonia, I interviewed for a chemistry professorship at MCC. And I wasn't really, no, I didn't interview. I just applied. And they called me back and said, "No, you don't have enough experience." Okay. So that didn't pan out. And then I got a call for a .6 position at Hilton, teaching chemistry in the community. And I was hesitant because it wasn't full time, and I was really struggling with making sure that we had health care for Will and Janet. And I interviewed there, and I thought I did okay. And I got the call, and they said we went with somebody else. And I was really upset, really disappointed about that. I said some things that I probably shouldn't have said to the AP that called me, and I hung up on the guy. And I thought that I had burned the bridge to Hilton forever, and I had to move on. So I re-enrolled at Fredonia. So that was it. That spring of 2008, nothing. I had nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So I went back to Fredonia. Said, "Oh, I'll get a second certification." Was going to do earth science because I liked that. So I started taking earth science class. I think I signed up for 18 credit hours or something crazy. I was taking 100 level and 400 level classes in the same semester. And then Janet saw an opening for a job at EMCC at BOCES 1 out in Fairport. And I'm like, I don't want to apply for this. You better apply for it. You need a job.
Mm-hmm.
So I applied, and I ended up getting it. They liked me. I guess I wasn't as arrogant during that one. I kind of went in with some humility, and they offered me the position, even though I had no idea what the heck I was supposed to be doing. You know, I doing auto repair, cosmetology, welding, and so it was a big culture shock for going back to there. But so I got the job, but I was still enrolled at Fredonia, so I had to withdraw from Fredonia, and I tried to collect my tuition, and they said that I
No
was
way.
too late,
Mm-hmm.
and so I had to eat 75% of that tuition
Oh.
for that semester, gone.
Mm-hmm.
But I started working, and they gave me tenure 3 years later when you could get tenure. And I'm really fortunate I got that job when I did, so I was in tier 4.
Did all those years also transfer into the public high school setting when you got your job eventually at Hilton?
You mean like the retirement system?
Yeah.
Or yep, yep.
Okay.
So
Uh,
got that,
and
and then go ahead.
I was just wondering when was your daughter born throughout all of this
So she was born in
transitions?
2014.
Okay.
So at that point,
And
go ahead.
nope, you go.
uh, so let's see. EMCC, met some great people there. I'm still really close friends with them. And in the summer of 2011, we got word that Hilton had another opening.
Hmm.
So I applied. I thought I didn't have a snowball's chance in hell of getting in there after what I said the last time. Um, but I went into the interview, and at that point, they wanted me to have a sample lesson. So I picked Redox, and I was going to do a demo. The demo is called Elephant Toothpaste. So you mix peroxide with some yeast, and it just shoots
Hmm.
like a geyser up of foam. And I remember the program coordinator at the time, Dawn George. She said, "Well, one of the hardest lessons that you could teach in chemistry, I think, is redox. How would you approach that?" And I said, "Well, actually, that's what I was going to talk to you all about today. That's the lesson I prepared."
Hmm.
And so I did really well with that interview. Again, the humility. I had nothing to lose. I wasn't putting all my eggs in the basket. I did try to position myself well for it. I picked the very first slot that they had available. I wanted to be the first person they saw and make a really good impression. And it went well. Mr. Barlow called me later that day and offered me the position, and I accepted.
And so that was in 2014
11.
or 11. Okay.
That was 11.
Uh,
Yeah.
and then what type of classes as you taught at the high school?
They started me off with Regents Chemistry and IB Chemistry 11, so the first year of IB Chem. And for that, I had to be trained, so they sent me and Mike Brookgay down to Atlanta for 3 or 4 days to get IB training. And then I've done IB Chem 12, so the second year. I did AP Chemistry. I'll be doing that again in the fall, I think, and Chemistry in the Community. And I've taught forensics.
What was it like those first 3 years of teaching? Because many people, including me, were like, you're coming in early, you're staying late, you just feel like you're under such a watchful eye, which should be the way it is. What was it like
Yeah.
though for you? You've already worked in the private sector, you've got a PhD, you've worked in other spots.
I had someone that was a mentor for me. So they would come in and help me with lesson plans. And at that point, as a new teacher, I was still writing lesson plans for every single lesson.
Hmm.
And now we kind of laugh at that we don't do those formal ones as much.
Hmm.
They helped me out, and otherwise they kind of left me alone because I wasn't that brand new 21, 22-year-old kid.
Hmm.
I was pushing 30, and I guess they assumed, hey, you must have your act together. You got a kid, you go to work. So it wasn't nearly as much work as what you do, and
Hmm.
then what I ended up doing when I moved to Hilton. So I wasn't in a classroom all the time. I had quite a bit of downtime to prepare, but then I would go into, let's see, I'd go into the auto repair, collision repair shop, and I'd do a lesson once a week for them, and then I'd be in cosmetology another day, or I'd be in criminal justice another day. But it was a challenging group of students, so they were non-conventional. So I learned how to interact with that student population really quickly. I had to get personable with them. I couldn't talk down to them, and then just make the science as fun as I could.
So now you're at Hilton. How do
Yep.
you make a learning environment non-judgmental, curious, but you need to engage kids nowadays more than ever.
Yeah.
And I think maybe down the road in the interview we'll talk about social media and its effect on
Okay.
kids.
Uh, I try. The first day of school, I blow something up. So I get a balloon, I do a chemical reaction, I fill that balloon full of hydrogen gas, and then I have students ignite it. It makes a big
Mm-hmm.
boom in the classroom, and then the bell rings and the kids are gone. So they're talking about it with their friends. I can't believe we just blew up a balloon. It was a huge fireball, and that kind of sets the tone, hopefully, for the year.
Mm-hmm.
And then the rest of the year, I just try to be personable with them. Uh, and I've had kids often say to me that chemistry isn't their favorite subject, but they liked the class. They
Mm-hmm.
liked the environment of the class, which I take as a compliment. I think then at that point I'm doing part of my job, trying to put the kids first over the content. They know they
Mm-hmm.
get the content, but if I can get them kind of engaged with it and critically thinking, I try to do that a lot. Then I think I'm successful. And I've had students who have gone on to college and they're getting their PhDs in chemistry and they're going into science careers. And I hear back from them once in a while. And when you have tough days, that's when I have my happy file. I don't know if you have a happy file, but I have a
I
happy
do.
file.
I actually do. I got a folder on my email.
Yep.
It's called the Attaboy file.
Yes. Yeah. And that's really important that when you have times that really suck in education, that you can
Mm-hmm.
go back and say, I am making a difference. Some of these kids, they do appreciate the work that I'm trying to do for them.
Mm-hmm. Any that you can come in particular? I mean, you mentioned you have some ex-students that are going and getting their PhDs. Any other
Yeah.
triumphs that you can recall?
There was one girl, I had her junior year, and I saw her out between the hallway between the gym and the auditorium, and she was walking towards me, and I hadn't seen her in a while, and she looked really, really thin, like not healthy thin. And I said hi to her, made a mental note of it, and I sent an email home, not telling the kid. And apparently that sparked a conversation with them. But I had no idea that the conversation was going on.
Mm-hmm.
And then a couple years ago, I got an email from this girl that said that was a huge turning point for her, that she was able to have conversations with her mom. She was going through a really tough time. She got help and she got married, and she sent me a picture, her wedding pictures, and really just thanked me for taking the time to care. And that's a huge thing.
Mm-hmm. How has teaching changed in the years that you've been involved at the high school?
Uh, Kids are the same.
Mm-hmm.
How has it changed? One negative thing, I don't like to necessarily talk a lot about it, but politics has become very pervasive in education now, where it never used to be. Like when you and I were in school, I really had no clue of my teacher's political leanings. None.
Mm-hmm.
Even in my history and government classes.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing. And today it seems that a lot of that teachers they wear their politics on their sleeve or on their lanyard.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that's and kids feel uncomfortable, I think, with that, especially if they don't agree with a certain set of ideologies, and
Mm-hmm.
so they kind of they have to either pretend or they kind of withdraw. So
Mm-hmm.
that's a big thing that I've seen change. And kids will maybe they do something just to appease the teacher instead of telling them exactly how they feel about a certain opinion piece that they were asked to write about,
Mm-hmm.
because they might fear some sort of reprisal.
Mm-hmm.
So that's been a big change that I can see. Uh, COVID COVID wrecked it.
Mm-hmm.
Everything was really awesome in 2019. Up before then, I loved it. Absolutely loved everything about it. I did the commencement speech in June of 2019, and then COVID hit, and just the wheels came off, and then we've been trying to pick up the pieces since then. And the kids are, uh, I said the first couple of years after COVID, the kids lacked stamina.
Hmm.
And I don't know if you could tell this with the
Yes.
little ones that you teach,
Hmm.
but they just could not hack a full day.
Hmm.
They ran out of steam really quickly. But now I feel like they're back.
Hmm.
And I was talking with one of my friends and about the whole COVID thing. He says, you can't blame the kids for COVID. It wasn't their fault,
Nope. Nope.
but they are unfortunately the victims of it.
Do you remember what your overall message was in your commencement speech that you did?
Don't be afraid to take a risk. I quoted and some people think it's really cheesy. They don't like the poem, but I really like it. It's Robert Frost's The Road Less Traveled.
Travel now.
Yeah, and that spoke to me because I don't think I've taken a very direct route to education.
Hmm.
I had to take some risks. I had to take some leaps of faith, and fortunately, I had a family that was supportive. Um, I told them to be thankful, be grateful. I think that's really important that kids are grateful for what they are given, the opportunities that they're given, because not every community has the same types of opportunities that our kids have. Not that it's perfect, but there's lots to be thankful for.
Um, and then you also got involved in coaching baseball in the program. Talk a little bit
Yeah.
about that.
Somehow I don't remember how I got kind of roped in with Jeff Murphy. I think originally he had heard that I played baseball. I wanted to play baseball, and I was looking to get into a men's league in the city. And at the time, it was NABA. It has since transitioned to the Rochester Baseball League. But he hooked me up with some guys there, and then he asked me if I wanted to come out and maybe help with the varsity team in the spring. And I said, yeah, that'd be awesome. I'd love to do that. So I came and helped him. And then after that first year, he asked me if I wanted to coach one of the modified teams. And I reluctantly said yes. But I did. I coached Mod B for a year. And when I first got into it, I felt like the expectation was we'd win a lot of games. Like Hilton baseball, we win lots of games. And we didn't
Hmm.
win a lot of games. We weren't particularly good. And I took that pretty hard. And so I only coached the 1 year. I had a bunch of support, but I didn't feel like I was being mm, I didn't feel like I was doing a good job at it.
Hmm.
And then now I'm the program assistant for the varsity team with Wheels. And I wasn't going to do that initially, but he helped me out when I was doing Mod B. And I feel like I owe him, so I want to help him and help the program. And the kids are great too, so that helps a lot.
How many years have you been doing the program assistant position?
This is my first year full time. The last 2 years I was half time with Jack McMahon,
Hmm.
and he got hired over at Olympia to help out Dan Ford there.
Gotcha. Gotcha. And then you've also formed a club at the high school now. Explain a little bit
Yep.
how that came about to be.
I had a student last year who once in a while I could just tell that we had some similarities, and I never really voiced those similarities to him, like politically. But someone else in his class was looking to start a club, and this kid said, "Hey, why don't you contact Doc and see if he might be interested in being one of the advisors?" And so he did, and I said, "Yeah, that sounds all right." And I went to one of my coworkers, Sonny Tobias, and I said, "Hey, look, would you be interested in being like a co-advisor for this?" And she said, "Yeah." And so we're doing this club. Right now it's called the Hilton High School Teen Republicans, and it's I think we got 8 to 10 kids who come to meetings regularly, and we just let them kind of talk. We don't direct any conversations. We don't try to push our politics onto them. It's really student driven.
And so you said 8 to 10 students?
Yep, I would say about that. Yeah.
And it's school sanctioned and all that, right?
Yes, it is. So right now it's just an intramural,
Mm-hmm.
and I think if we have enough interest, we do some community stuff, then we can apply to become a full-time club.
All right. Well, we're coming towards the end. I got some. Well, I'm not going to call them softball questions, but
Okay.
Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Where do you
Oh
want to
boy.
see yourself in 5 years?
Probably almost retired.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How do you see
Probably.
retirement? How do you see retirement for Dr. Gaupp?
So
What do you want to be doing then?
I am still really big into the outdoors. So we have a camp up on the Tug Hill in northern New York, and I spend probably 60% of my summers there. So that's kind of where, and Janet and I have talked about it, where we want to be after I'm done teaching. It'll obviously depend on her career also. She just got a new job, so we might hang around a little bit longer. But yeah, I want to be outside. I like to backpack. So I'm planning my third trip out to Montana for next summer, where I do a solo trip. The last time I was out there, I did an 80-mile one, so I'm going to try and replicate that. So yeah, just being outside, and then who knows? We'll see what happens with Emma, with our little one, if she decides that she wants to have a family.
All right. And if you could have dinner with anyone in history, who would it be and why?
It would have to be my grandmother. So she immigrated to the U.S. in the 1920s, and she was born in 1898. So, and coming from Germany like that, she was there during the hyperinflation. She used to talk about, wheelbarrows full of cash to buy a loaf of bread. So I didn't. She passed away when I was a senior in high school, and I would really like to now be able to sit down with her and have some conversations about growing up in Germany, what her family life was like, and then being a German American in the United States during World War II.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it had to have been crazy.
Oh, totally. Oh, totally. That's an interesting answer. Well, it's a cool answer. Carl Gaupp, some items on your bucket list.
To complete all of the high peaks in the Adirondacks, so become a 46er.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really have a set bucket list. I'm not a really big traveler, so it's not
Mm-hmm.
like I need to circumvent the globe. Just be outside, I guess. Be out in nature, backpacking, hiking, hunting, fishing. Maybe being a little more self-reliant, so growing my own food, things like that.
Oh, neat. Favorite movie?
The Outlaw Josie Wales, a 1976 production by Clint Eastwood. Favorite movie, love it.
I can say I haven't seen it, but maybe I'll take your
yeah,
advice.
it's in my rotation every fall. I watch it during hunting season. I mean, there's some others that are in the rotation too, but that's the primary one.
Favorite TV show? Or if you don't watch TV, that's fine.
Yeah, so one of the newer ones that I like a lot is Reacher.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been watching that one on Amazon.
Oh, now I know what show that is. That with that big husky dude?
Yeah, he's
Who's
ginormous.
And
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, he just breaks faces and doesn't
I know.
apologize for it, and I find that
Right.
kind of kind of appealing.
Right. Yeah, and isn't he? Yeah, he's figuring things out. He's super smart too, and he doesn't he have
Yes.
like a. It's almost like an A team, and he's like George Papard was.
Yeah. Yes.
Great joke.
Second season was definitely like that. It was like an A team for sure. Yep.
Okay. Um, let's see here. Favorite book? Are you a reader at all?
Yeah, I actually just started getting back into reading when I was in graduate school. I it really was. I hated it because I was reading chemistry papers all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But now I really like the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
I started reading another fantasy series, The Wheel of Time, which
Mm-hmm.
they tried to make an Amazon series out of, but I haven't watched any of it. Those are two big books that are series that I like. Oh, and once in a while, yeah, we'll just keep it at those two. There are other stuff I read, but yeah.
Um, one thing that I haven't brought up with you that people might not know about Carl Gaupp.
Don't I actually play video games quite a bit. I used to. As a big gamer. The headset kind of gives me away now, but
Or does?
yeah.
What were you an expert in any of them, or were just you dominated them all?
No, no, I was never really good at the first-person shooters.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I'm much better in real life than I am in a video game. The game that I played a lot of was World of Warcraft. For a very
Mm-hmm.
long time, I played that, and I was really into it heavily. I'm not so much anymore. I don't have as much time to dedicate to it like I used to. Other things, I like to reload, so I
Mm-hmm.
started reloading my own ammunition now. So I'm trying to
Okay.
pick up another hobby. That's one of the
Okay.
things that I getting closer is when you get closer to retirement. I think it's important that you have a hobby. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying to occupy myself with some other things to keep my brain going.
All right. And I'm going to end with a quote from one of your colleagues.
Okay.
She writes, "Up in the high school, we hear students talk about their likes and dislikes for teachers across the board. I have never in my 8 years here heard of a student say they didn't like Doc or mention anything ill of his teaching style. He holds students accountable and is a firm believer in meritocracy, which in turn allows students to see where their strengths and weaknesses lie and allows Carl to help them navigate and learn through the gaps. The past few years in particular have been difficult. It has been great to have a coworker in the building to go to talk to logically about many decisions and conversations that have happened clearly without any logic or reasoning to them. It makes me feel like I'm not going crazy. Dr. Gaupp is incredibly skilled at eloquently and accurately conveying thoughts to other staff for issues or questions we have that arise. It has been a pleasure getting to know him over the past couple of years, and I hope that we can continue to work alongside one another in the parameters of the club we both oversee." So I think in that respect, where you reached out with an email to that lady about her daughter not looking particularly healthy,
Yeah.
this comment came from Sonny Tobias, and I do think it's a testament to the effect that you have on those around you.
Thank you, and I thanks to Sunny for saying that. That's really nice. She's been great with this club, bouncing ideas off of and talking through things that can be really frustrating to us as educators.
And final thought, if you had to, you're giving the commencement speech, your last year, you're retiring. What is Dr. Carl Gaupp's legacy he would like to leave on his students?
I've thought about this. I really want to do commencement again, and I would probably have to ad lib this part. I don't even know if I could do it. I don't think Dr. Kosorik or Dr. Green would. They'd probably rip me off the stage, but I would tell people, I would tell them, do your shit. Just
Mm-hmm.
just do it. Take pride in what you do. Do a good job. Get it done, and people are going to recognize that. So really simple.
3 words. And apparently the shortest commencement speech ever given was never give
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
Now it's legendary, but we don't know if it really happened. But that was Winston Churchill. So if you
Really.
do 3 words,
Wow.
I you'll be right up there in those ranks. So
I can't imagine that. That'd be something.
well, Carl, it's been great getting to know you again through this podcast. And at this point, we're going to end our episode, Gabbin with Gaupp. This has been Mike Heiss with Dr. Kyle Gaupp of Hilton High School, and we'll be back with more episodes. Please join us.